We've got the all-new Alpha X 33 from Hoyt. This is going to replace my VTM 31. This is going to be my pretty much all-around shooting bow that I'm going to use for the rest of this year and probably some into next year as well. It's a little bit longer axle to axle. It's been all the way since 2018 since I've shot a slightly longer axle to axle bow. This comes in just at a touch over 33 inches. I'm really not concerned about using it in a tree stand or a ground blind for whitetail this fall, but if it's an issue, I suppose I can always change in the future. But just a little bit longer platform, something that will give me the stability that I'm looking for, but also something that I could still take hunting and still use out in the field. So really looking forward to setting up this bow. We're going to head into the shop and do basically start to finish of everything I'm going to do to get this bow set up. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to run this bow at 70 pounds. It's going to be very, very similar to my setup that I ran last year on my VTM 31. 70 pounds, 29-inch draw. These cams this year are just a little bit different. They actually have 1/4-inch increments that you can change on the cam. So it's really, really convenient for the archer like me that likes to be finicky, likes to be picky, likes to get their draw length exactly where they want it, because that's obviously a huge factor in accuracy. So with these specific cams on this Alpha X33, the range with the mods that I've got on here is 27.25 to 29 inches. And that's perfect because I am at the very top end of the mod. What that means is that my cams are going to get the max efficiency because of this. Okay, anytime we rotate that mod off of the max adjustment for the draw length, we're losing a little bit of efficiency out of the cam. That's why Hoyt, instead of just having one single mod that you can adjust from 26 to 30 inches or 31 inches, they've got multiple different mods that you can change that are within your range so that it's a lot more efficient regardless of the draw length that you're in. So with this Alpha X33, I'm at the peak, at the very top, and that was another main decision of why I wanted to go with the 33, because I knew I'd get more efficiency out of the cams and out of this bow. Let's talk about the let-off here just a little bit as well. Basically on these new cams with the let-off adjustments, you've got 85, 80, and 75. Now typically I'm running 80% in my mods, but new with these mods as well, there's a hard and an extra hard setting for the back wall. So we can actually take these from both the top and the bottom cam and switch them to put them into the extra hard position to get a little bit firmer back wall if desired. I really just need to do some experimenting with that to figure out if that's what I do like. But I'm just going to run them as they are and put them into the 80% mods for right now. So I'll go ahead and make those adjustments real quick. And you've got to take this screw all the way out, and we're going to move it closer to the string where it's going to contact. Okay, so the 80 is right in that middle position. If I can get this tiny screw in here with my fingers. Okay, it fits in there pretty naturally, the stop does. So you don't have to force it in there. You don't want a screw to tighten it in there. You want it to fit in there and then tighten that screw on top of it. Okay. So as you can see right there, it's in that middle setting, 80%. Snug it up, make sure it's firm. And then that is set perfectly. Go ahead and do it on this side. It is important if you're adjusting these, make sure you are getting these stops in the exact same position. You'd hate to have one at 75, one at 80, or one at 80, one at 85. That can definitely give you some issues, and you'll definitely be pulling your hair out trying to sync the cams and get everything to tune. So that brings us to our next step here. The next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to tie on our nocking point. We're going to need this to be able to sync the cams. This might have to be cut off and retied depending on how far off the sync is here from the factory with these factory strings, but we can always do that as we go. So what I'm going to do is just take this square right here. I just clip it onto the string. This is just an Easton 90-degree square. And what I do is I line it up basically 90 degrees to the center of the burger button hole. So if you look right there, you can see that it's basically splitting the burger button hole right down the middle. That's just a good starting point. I'm going to tie the top knock set just probably 1/8 of an inch above 90 degrees and just start there. And then we'll sync the cams, and if we need to make any adjustment to that knocking point after we tie it, after we've made the adjustments, we can go ahead and do that. So for the knock sets, I still like using the BCY 3D serving material. This is just a white color, which I kind of like because it's a lighter color that can collect more light. That way in low light situations, you can see it easier if you need to knock, if you're in the tree stand in the morning or anything like that. So we'll go ahead and tie this on here. It's basically just an overhand knot, but you'll wrap it once and then wrap it twice and go all the way down. Okay. And that first knot location is going to be the most important for the location of where we want to tie it. So I've got it just 1/8 inch high as center. I'll pull it pretty firm, pretty tight. It's important when you're pulling it tight, you're not pulling back and forth unevenly on the strands. It'll scissor and cut itself. So I tied it on this side, and I'm going to go to the back side. Do the same thing. Wrap it once, wrap it twice. And I'm working up the string because this is my top knock set. So that's number 2. Come back to this side. Number 3. Number 4. Back on this side. Number 5. Okay, I've got that tied on, good and tight. Go ahead and trim just roughly 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit less, off of there. Okay, take our lighter. Just melt those ends down. Don't want that coming loose. Okay. Now I need to grab an arrow. I got my arrows right over here. We'll go ahead and grab them. Got a whole case of goodies. Okay. With this particular bow and this setup, I'm going to be running the Easton Axis 340. It's the same arrow that I've ran for the last several years. I did experiment with the 300 spine last year for a little bit with the same setup, and ultimately determined that the 340 spine Axis with 50 grains of brass up front, cut exactly at 27 inches, flies extremely, extremely forgiving out of my 70-pound bow at a 29-inch draw. So I wouldn't cut your arrow any shorter than 27 inches with a 29-inch draw. My arrow is just barely over the end of my rest. I can shoot all the mechanicals that I need to without the blades contacting the rest, but I can shoot this 340 with that insert weight because of the short length that I've cut it to. So we'll go ahead and take our arrow, we'll knock it onto the string here, just beneath that first knock set, and I can just visually look too and see that with the arrow knocked the way it is, it looks like it's almost 90 degrees straight down that burger buttonhole right there. So visually, I can tell that the square is put me exactly where I want it to be, at least for the start. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and tie in the bottom knock set. So I'll cut this piece off. Just come right here to the bottom. Now, since this bow is just slightly longer axle to axle, it means that the string angle is going to be slightly less than a 30-inch bow or a 31-inch bow, which means I don't necessarily have to give as much of a gap with my knock sets on here. I'm still going to give a gap because I don't want the knock pinch from happening, but I'll keep it relatively small. About right there is just a good start. You know, the more consistent, the more concise you can make these knots, the better. It's not the end of the world if they're not perfect, but the more perfect you can make them, the better they look, and the less movement they'll have as you shoot the bow and as things kind of settle in. So I've got that tied where I want it. It's just a little bit bigger than that top knock set. I just want that for the spacing and the pulling position of where the D-loop's actually going to pull against the string on. Not crucial, but just something that I personally like to do. We'll burn these ends down just like the first one. Just careful not to burn the rest of it. We just want to melt it down. It goes down relatively easy. Okay, knock sets are in. Time for D-loop. This is the BCY number 23. A little bit smaller stuff, more malleable than the BCY number 24. It's what I've preferred for the last quite a few years and what I'll continue to prefer unless I find something that seems to work better. But quite honestly, I'll get this D-loop tied on and I won't have to replace the D-loop until I have to replace the string most of the time, and that's shooting 4 or 5 different releases on the same bow and still not wearing it out. Whereas some of the BCY number 24 stuff, I don't know if it's the coating on the actual material itself, but sometimes it seems to wear out just a little bit quicker and sometimes isn't quite as malleable, and I just don't prefer it quite as much personally. Still works great, just prefer the BCY 23 better. So what I just did here was I just fluffed up the end and burned a basically ball joint. That's what's going to hold our knot into place. So it's just a little tiny burnt end that's thicker than the rest of the string. I'm going to start with the top knot, put it over the top, wrap it down, cross my string, come back over and put it right through that hole I just made. You want to see that again? I'll do it one more time. Okay, go over the string, cross down towards the middle. I'll cross over the string, my D-loop string. I'll go underneath the bowstring and back through this hole right here. Okay, and you can kind of pull that tight right down to the top knock set. Okay, and the reason I like doing this is you see that the D-loop comes across the top of this side of the string, not the bottom side of the string. So if I'm shooting a handheld release, it's more natural for me to turn my hand this way towards my face. So it's going to be more natural for this D-loop knot to rotate that direction rather than torquing or pulling against that string and actually twisting that string at full draw. So I'll go to the bottom and I'll go on the underneath side this time to start. And I just made this loop, so I'll go through it, kind of pull it pretty tight so it's pretty small right here. And then I'll take the excess, go over the top, and I want to end through this hole with the knot facing up, just like that. Okay, so that's basically the knot itself. I've got just a knock set tool here, Easton knock set tool. I'll kind of pull it to the preferred length I want, which is about 3/4 of an inch. Just looking at it, that's about the perfect length right there. I'll go ahead and cut it. And I'll cut it just a little bit long because I am going to burn it down and shorten it. And then what I like to do is I'll just untie the knot to burn it. You can burn it with the knot tied in. Not a huge deal, but I'll just undo it here. Fluffed out that end. Melt this down. It's important not to burn this if you can. You just want to melt it. Sometimes burning it can weaken that material a little bit. So we just kind of melted it down, made this bulb. Okay, that's all good. Okay, go underneath, through the hole, over the top, back to the hole we made, slide it up to the bottom knock set position. You see it's set right there. We'll go ahead and tighten it up. Okay, so that's pretty good. It's maybe just a touch long right there, maybe just a 1/16 of an inch longer than I usually prefer. But I'll go ahead and I'll shoot this for right now. As I shoot it, as I adjust draw length and kind of do the fine tuning and tinkering as I shoot, I may adjust that, may make it slightly shorter. I don't like it shorter than about 3/4 of an inch just because I do use a handheld release a lot of the time. When I do that and I twist that D-loop, I don't want to torque the string by having the D-loop too short. So we'll just start with it right here. So now that we've got our knock point set, the next step that we're going to do is sync the cams. So we'll go ahead and grab the draw board. We'll put it up on this table, clear stuff off here a little bit, throw it in, draw it back, and see where it's setting to start. So if we look right here, we've got our bottom stop, just barely making contact with that cable, so that's good. And if we come right here and you look at the top one, there's just a less than paper thin gap of the stop touching the cable right there. So at this point, quite honestly, without even shooting it yet, the cams are in sync enough where we need to now actually install the rest and shoot it, kind of settle those strings just a little bit. We'll come back and double check the sync, make those fine-tuned adjustments here. Sync is one of those things where you can't set up a bow without getting it perfect. This is a step that I think a lot of people that do their own bow tuning that don't have a press miss or don't do because they don't have a press, and you do need a press to be able to make these adjustments. But this is very, very, very important for tuning and setting up your bow. If your cams are not in sync, it can just make a lot of the other tuning so much more difficult. You're going to get a lot of the arrow coming out more like this, which can just create troubles with consistency, accuracy, specifically with broadheads when you're bow hunting. So for right now, this is perfect. I can even look right here on the draw length, and it's coming in at 29 and about 1/8, which is right where I want it to start. Like I said, I'll kind of fine tune that as I shoot it and as I get the setup going, but this is a perfect starting point, which is awesome. Brand new bow out of the box. Haven't done a thing to it other than tie on the D-loop and draw it back, and cams are perfectly in sync. So can't ask for much more than that. That's perfect. We'll go ahead, we'll throw the rest on now, and then we'll send some arrows into the target. So the rest I'm going to be using is the QAD Integrate MX2. This is the same rest I've ran for the last couple of years, and really have no complaints with it whatsoever. It's light, it's integrated extremely well into the bow, and I've quite honestly had no issues with the cord getting in the way, hunting, or rest coming loose, or anything like that whatsoever. I do like using a limb-driven rest as well, but having this that is so light that can integrate right behind the riser like that makes this a great option for a hunting bow, but also for just general shooting, which is what I do for local 3D tournaments and just fun stuff like that. So QAD still sends the knife that they give you. That's cool. Look at this. It's got a little QAD deal I can put right in the back of the burger button hole here. And ironically enough, it's the same color as my riser, Tombstone. That's pretty sweet. Okay, we'll take our rest, and I'll just loosen up this bracket right here. Maybe. Very tight. All right, on the inside we've got this internal clamp. I'll just grab this Allen wrench for that. And just a screw. We're just loosening this. It's just loosening the clamp so that we can slide it onto the bow here. Okay. So with this inline system, we can go ahead, slide it right on. It's very conveniently set up with the adjustment in the very middle of the rest with this arrow, and there's a notch pretty much right in the center, maybe just a little bit above center of the burger button hole. So that's where we're going to start to tighten it in. I'm just going to line it up with that, get on this little screw, tighten that in. Okay. Then I'll take this outer shell here, put it right back over the top. Okay. Take my bolt, put it back in. There we go. Okay. I'll just firm it up for right now. Okay. Now before we do anything else, what I like to do is I don't put the bow in a bow vise or do anything fancy like that. Quite simply, I will just knock an arrow, and I'm visually going to set the center shot for this bow. So I can just look down, line up the string with the bottom cam track, look at it, and I can see it's quite a bit outside, but it's not too far. In fact, I'm just going to leave it where right it is right now. Okay, if you look at that from a vertical perspective. From up and down as well, kind of the same thing. If I look at that, you know, the arrow is slightly pointed, maybe slightly downhill, but it's almost exactly where I want to at least start. So the MX2, obviously with this being the Hoyt MX2, it's probably set up in a way where minimal adjustment will be needed if you put the nocking point in the right location to begin with. So I'm not going to make a single adjustment to the rest the way that it is, just eyeballing it and looking at it. It looks fairly close. We'll go ahead and we'll put this bow into the press now to put in this cord for the rest right here. And then what we'll do is we'll do some initial paper tear tuning just to check everything. But let's go ahead and put it in the press right here. Okay, it's pressing the limbs very evenly. All I'm doing is I'm taking the pressure off of these limbs here so that the string is loose, because what we're going to do is we're going to take this cord right here off the rest and we're going to put it through this downward cable. The downward cable is always going to be this closest cable, closest to the rest, so this forward one right here. If you don't know which cable it is, don't guess, just pull it out of the press, slowly draw back, and you'll see which cable's going down visually. So with this, we can see we've got the holes to the riser right here. Hoyt's done this in a way so that we can put the rest in it or put the cord through it so that it's not wrapping around the side. Of course, we could put it around the side if we wanted to, but we could put it through, quite honestly, either of these holes right here is from what it looks like. I think I might put it right through this bottom one. I don't think I'll have an issue with it. If I do, I can always adjust it, but that'll probably keep the cord mostly out of the way. Let me look at this top one. I could do that, but it's going to be rubbing right there, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put it through this bottom one. I'd rather have it right here because then it's coming down and it's going to rub less on that riser right there is what I feel like. So I'll go ahead and take this cable and I'm going to try to split it. I'm going to press the bow just a little more. Okay, so I'm going to try to split it pretty evenly here, just visually. I'm not going to count the strands or anything. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just holding in the rest cable is all it's doing. And that just looks pretty close. So we'll go ahead and slide it through just like that. Okay, so now I'm going to pull the bowstring itself back up taut. Just make sure everything's in the cam track still. I'll go ahead and I'll loosen it out of the press. Okay. So just looking at it right here, you can see the cord is coming down through the riser. It's into that downward cable. It's not set yet. The length is not set. I'm not going to do this on a draw board. What we're going to do is I'll just go outside. I'll grab my bow, grab a couple arrows. We'll draw back. We'll set the cord that way. And then let's just put a few shots through it just to kind of settle the strings a little bit. That way, you know, the string is just kind of settled a little bit before we go into even just the initial paper tuning tear. So let's go ahead and go outside. So quite simply, what's going to happen with this is we're going to draw back. When we draw back, this cord from the rest is actually going to slide and pull through this downward cable, okay? When we do that, it'll pull the rest all the way up to the shooting position. We can actually draw it back and fire it in one shot, and our cord is going to be very close to set. So we'll just go ahead and do that quick. Very nice. So if we look at the cord right here, you can see now there's some play in it, right? So what has happened is I drew back, that cord was pulled through the downward cable, just like this. It basically set itself in the correct position that it needs to be in. So for right now, we'll leave it set. We will tie this in, but let's just shoot 10 or so arrows into the target and get this string just a little bit settled before we go back inside. Whew, really buries them in there. This is going to be a shooter, I can tell. Pretty quiet for a 33-inch axle-to-axle bow. Okay. So obviously we've only shot it 10 or so shots. The string is not stretched, it's not fully broken in, but we've shot it just a little bit, just enough to kind of settle things a little bit for where we're at with this setup. Let's go inside, let's put the felt on the rest, and then let's get our stuff set up to do our initial paper tuning tear. Okay. This is just to make things a little bit quiet. Probably heard the arrow when I was drawing back on there, on the arrow rest.
Yeah, it's a little crooked.
I told you, I'm not the steadiest person out there.
As long as the top is pretty even, it should
Yeah,
be fine.
that's, quite honestly, that's the main thing. Really, this is just to make the arrow rest quiet when you draw back. You know, we obviously want it centered so that we don't get consistency issues with where the arrow sits on the arrow rest, but as long as we've got that centered, like Micah said, so it's kind of even on both sides, then we should have no issues. So let's rearrange things here just a little bit. We'll put the target up, probably right here on this table, and set up our ultra fancy paper tuner that you guys are about to see. It's really, really cool. And we'll shoot a few arrows through it initially, and just look at the tears and make the adjustments we need to make. You know, if it's far off, we'll adjust the rest, we'll shim the cams, we'll double check our sync, we'll do all those things, but know that this is not going to be the final tear or the final tune by any means. It's really just a starting point before we actually put our sight on, put our stabilizers on, put our quiver on, put all of our extra gear on, and then go out, sight in, shoot bare shafts, shoot broadheads, and tune from there. Because if we're not close before we start that process, it can be kind of frustrating trying to make those adjustments and really hone that in without doing this paper tuning beforehand. We could skip the paper tuning, but we're going to do it just to get it close. So let's get it set up and do it. Target has seen some better days. This here is our super fancy paper tuner. We just have this ladder, so this is easy thing we can do to just tape some paper to it and go ahead and shoot through it for our paper tuning. We don't need to make a fancy holder or anything like that. Really, we're not going to spend enough time paper tuning for it to really matter. So we don't need to go out of our way and spend all of our time and energy and effort doing something like that to do this. And we can just put a piece of tape up on this ladder and shoot it. So that's what we're going to do. Look at that. That's a pretty good starting point, Micah.
That looks really good.
Okay, so, you know, we really haven't done a thing other than tie on the nocking set and D-loop and install the rest. Have made no adjustments, and the arrow is already coming out of the bow very, very straight. So really what we're doing with this paper tuning test is we're just testing it to make sure that the arrow's not coming out all wonky to begin with. And we can clearly see that it's coming out very, very close to perfect. I mean, it might not be exactly perfect, but we're not tuning for exact perfect right now. We just wanted to get our initial tune set, because now we're going to put the sight on, put the peep sight on, then we'll add the rest of the gear. We'll kind of go through that whole process, and then we'll get into more specific tuning. So let's go ahead and grab the sight and the peep sight and get that thrown on. Now, if you guys are wanting to watch this video because you want to learn how to set up your own bow build from start to finish, all the details and how to do it, we created a Ultimate Bow Build Masterclass online course. You can go there, check it out. The link will be in the description, but that is your how-to guide on how to do all of this. I won't show you every tiny little specific detail here. It would just take too long, but that course, we've done it in a very efficient way so that you can set your bow up top to bottom very efficiently, very easily, and you can always go back to it as a resource. So the sight I'm going to be running on this setup is the all-new Ultra View slider. I guess new to me. I've heard a lot of great things about this sight. I've got a few close buddies that have been running them and love them, so decided to give it a shot, and we're going to run it on this setup and see how I like it. So I got it with the Picatinny mount option. So it's pretty much all ready to install. I put the housing already on the slider side itself. So I'm just going to loosen this up to go ahead and install it on the bow. And with the Picatinny mount option here, there's kind of a bolt that goes through the middle. And if you see on the Picatinny rail here, there's 3 positions that I could put it in. I'm going to put it just in the middle position, just so that it's right in the middle of the adjustment range. I don't need it higher or lower. We can adjust it if we need to when sighting in, but shouldn't have to. And then it's quite as simple as just go ahead and tightening that up. So that's solid. I mean, it's quite as simple as that to install the sight with the Picatinny. I like it because it's slim on the side, it's very lightweight, very in line. And even if I line up this sight with my rest, I'll go ahead and just set it close for now. I can pop this out and then twist it, push it out just a little bit. Okay, that's pretty close. Just want to get my sight somewhat close for where I think it might be when I go to shoot it. Okay. And then height-wise, we'll obviously have to go test that, but first thing we're going to do before that is toss in the peep sight. So to toss in the peep sight, we're going to need the press, of course, but I also want to know the general idea of the location of where I need to put the peep. So what I'm going to do is I'll draw it back just right in here. I've got my stand on X release, and it's got a safety pin, so I'm just going to put that safety pin in so that it can't fire or shouldn't fire. But just in case, I'll load an arrow anyway. I'd rather have an arrow in the wall than my new bow derailed. So we'll draw it back. I'll just kind of visual of where I think the peep sight needs to be relative to this string right here. Quite honestly, where that string is at is a really close spot to where that peep needs to be. So let's go ahead and we'll toss it in right there for starters. Get it out of the packaging. The peep I'm using, very simple, 3/16 black peep. I've tried some more expensive peeps. I've tried some of the other things out there. For a hunting bow, I found you really don't need anything more than this. 3/16 is what I prefer. I could run an 1/8, which is going to be a little bit smaller. I won't be able to see the full housing. But 3/16 gives me the right amount of light, and black helps give me no reflection from any weird lighting. And then the size of the peep, being that it's not super tunneled, means that I get more forgiveness with the peep if I'm on a hunt and my string twists or something like that happens. I can still see through it, whereas some of the longer, more expensive peeps, sometimes you can have issues if that peep isn't quite lined up perfectly in the string, which can happen when you're on a hunt. So let's go ahead and toss this back in the press and put this peep in. Okay, so if you see through right here, this is just the string that comes right from the factory through these factory strings, just splitting the middle exactly. It is important when you put the peep in that it is split on the string exactly, just so it's even on both sides. This will help with peep twist and stuff like that, so it's not rotating for you when you shoot or when you draw back. So we'll go ahead and split that. That should be exactly middle between the string. Each side should have equal strands. The peep sight, we want to put it in like this, so when we draw back, it rotates straight up like this. If we were to put it in this way here, we draw back, or I'd have to twist it around like this, we draw back and we wouldn't be able to see through that hole. So we want to put it in just like this. Okay, so simple as that. I'm just going to put this back in the middle for right now and slide it up out of the way just to keep my middle set of the strings set so I don't lose it. Okay, we'll just keep it there for right now. So this peep sight right here, it's in the edges of the peep. No strands or over the sides or anything like that. So it's good to start. Let's take it back to the table here. I'll show you what I do to just initially tie it in to hold it. Now it's important when you're just initially putting your sight on, putting your peep sight on, we're not going to do a full tie-in. We don't want to do a full tie-in because I don't know if that's exactly where my peep sight needs to be quite yet. I just want to tie it in so that the peep sight doesn't fall out of the string when I'm shooting. But really, your peep sight location is extremely, extremely important to accuracy when you're shooting. And if I were to tie this in and make this permanent, and then we have to raise or lower the sight a bunch, or move the rest after we do more fine tuning, and then adjust the sight, like that peep sight might not be in the location that I want it to be in. So this is just a rough tie-in. We can make these adjustments as we tune and as we set it up. So let's just do a rough tie-in. So I just wrap around the peep. Similar to the knock sets, I'll just do an overhand knot and I'll just wrap it twice. Yeah, and really the goal of this is just to hold the peep from coming out of the string, so there's no need to get fancy with this in any way. Just a couple of wraps like that, quite honestly, all I need. I'll trim these down. Take my lighter. Burn them up. Okay, all is good. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we really want to get this peep sight at least a little bit closer before we throw some of the rest of the stuff on. So let's just go out to the target. We'll grab my arrows, we'll do some shooting, and let's just kind of get this rough sighted in at just roughly 20 yards. From there, we'll be able to see with the peep if that height is close to where we want it or not, and then we'll come back in, we'll throw on quiver, we'll throw on stabilizers, we'll throw on everything else, and then we'll get into more of the specific tuning. So let's walk out there and do a little bit of shooting. These are the same arrows as those other ones. I've just fletched them with white fletchings because these arrows have been fletched and refletched quite a little bit. So let's grab it. Let's just go closer to the target with the few initial shots, just in case it's way off. I don't want to be missing the target or losing any arrows. I forgot my other release inside. I'll use this one. Okay, so it's low. So for right now, really, we're just trying to get that peep sight about where I want it. So let's just lower that sight for now, just to get it somewhat close to that. And I just want to test mainly for the peep height. That was too far. Like quite a little bit. That's good though, because the peep does feel pretty close to where I want it to be. Okay, that's close enough. The peep and the sight is the location approximately where I want it. We're still not going to tie the peep in yet because we still might have more adjustments to make tuning wise, but let's go in, let's put on stabilizers, quiver, and all that good stuff. So let's toss on some accessories. I've got the Hoyt 6-arrow quiver right here. Just pulled it out of the box. We've got to make some slight adjustments to it to get it to fit. So this is how it comes. This is the bracket that attaches it to the bow. So I've just got to loosen this up and spin it around. Pretty straightforward, simple. I'm not going to get it perfect from the start, but just going to visually line it up so that it's in approximately the right spot. And we'll go ahead and we'll put in the post right here that will go into the riser itself. So this is a pretty efficient system. This quiver is pretty lightweight for what it is. And you know, I've ran it for the last couple years. I did have the removable, basically, two-piece quiver. It was one piece, but it would attach on the top and attach on the bottom. I personally just prefer the one that attaches just here at the top. I find it to be lighter weight, more well-balanced, and easier to shoot with the quiver on if I need to. So I'm just running this single top removable quiver, and I ran it last year. I really liked it, so that's what I'm running this year. That screw's not wanting to screw in all the way. Let me take it off once and mess with it. No, should be enough room there. I'm not sure why it's getting hung up. Let me try to just screw it in by itself here. Maybe. I should read the instructions. Instructions. Okay, we've done this right here. These are bigger. No, let's see. Ah, look at that. Okay. Josh needs to read is what he needs to do. It says, depending on your exact quiver, these bolts may be needed to attach your quiver to the mounting location on your Alpha X riser. So, not Hoyt's fault, Josh's fault. I make mistakes. That means if I make mistakes, then there's other people out there that are probably going to make the same mistake too. So maybe this will help you if you're putting on your quiver. This was the bolt that came with it. They drilled it through to the right location on this block, But with this specific riser, being that it's thin where this is at, I need the shorter bolt to make it work. Look at that. It's actually working how it's supposed to. Maybe if I read the instructions, then I wouldn't be tinkering around for the last 5 minutes. Perfect. That's good and firm. Okay. So on to the next portion of putting this quiver on. Okay, now I'm looking at the top of the quiver right here because I want to adjust that so that it clears my limb 100%, but I also want to lower that down just a little bit. So I'm going to go back to this adjustment screw right here. Okay, I'll wiggle it down so that's about where I want it, just like that. And the spacing outward like this. I don't want it so close like this where I draw back and the limb hits it, but I don't want it kicked way far out either. I just want to make sure I've definitely got enough clearance there. Okay, let's just check how the arrow's going to sit in it. Yeah, and realistically speaking, since this is a slightly longer bow and I'm running pretty short arrows, I can probably lower this quiver down just a little bit and get my arrows more evenly across the bow and not have this quite so high. So I actually might lower that down just a little bit, not too much. And I don't normally shoot with my quiver on anyway, but you definitely want to have this gap set so that you don't hit it if that's a possibility. Okay. All right. Just like that, that'll hold it good. So if you see on this too, on this peg, it's got an additional length sticking out here if you need to put your quiver further out. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take that off because that's just unneeded weight that I don't need to have on my quiver. So I can loosen this up. Pull that right off. And then it's a lot cleaner. It's right here. Take the quiver on and off. I just loosen this, pull it off. I can slide it right back on just like that. So that's perfect. It's a good place for that for right now. I can always fine tune, adjust that later. Let's go ahead, let's put on the Go Sticks. So these are the new Go Sticks 2.0. These are better than the old ones because you don't have to screw them in and out. You can keep them attached to your bow at all times. On this bow, I'm planning on doing so. So we'll go ahead, we'll mount it on this bottom location. I'll take out the short stop stabilizer right there. And then with this, we're going to have just a bolt that locks that in and then a kind of a bottom guide bolt right there that can hold it in place, keep it from twisting on us. Okay, Go Sticks are installed. Now I'm going to go ahead and put on the stabilizers. I'll run a rear stabilizer right off the bottom and I'll run a front stabilizer. I've experimented some with running it in the bottom. I do really like it, but I'm still very used to the stabilizer right here beneath the grip. So I think for now, that's where I'm going to put it. I'm going to do a lot of stabilizer adjustment and playing with it as I continue to shoot the bow. But I think for this initial setup, I'm going to just go ahead and use this location right underneath the grip. So I do like running a little bit more weight on my stabilizers personally. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add these weights onto the stabilizer. I'm just going to run to start, looks like 6 ounces up front on my front 10-inch stabilizer. Back stabilizer, we've got the back bar mount right here. This is a really slick design, very lightweight. Don't really need a lot of adjustment when I set this up, so I have the ability to adjust it up, down, left, right, however I want to, but I'm not necessarily going to need to make a ton of adjustment with it. So I'm going to run it off the left side of my bow, being that it's right-handed. That's just the way that I prefer to do it. It's the way most people will prefer to do it. Tighten it down. I'll get on this side. I'm just going to move the adjustment bar out here. Okay. And then we've got a little quick detach right here that I can screw into the other stabilizer. I'll slide it down in the bracket. Tighten it up. And from here I can kind of make the adjustments just visually how I want to. So I'll go back, loosen this side up just a little bit. That way I can rotate it down, potentially. We'll start with it mostly straight back. I don't need a ton of weight out to the side. So I'm going to swing this in just a little bit. At least to start. Like I said, I'll make all these fine-tuning adjustments to the stabilizers as I shoot it more. I'm not going to get it perfect on day one, but I'll at least get it close for where I want it. So this, I'm going to run, looks like 8 ounces. So I'm going to start there in the back. Okay, that feels pretty good. All right. So at this point, now that I fumbled around with the quiver and got the stabilizers on, got the go sticks on, we are ready to do some bear shaft tuning. So I'm going to grab a couple of these bear shafts, going to grab some fletched arrows. We're going to go out, we're going to start at 20 yards, and we're going to shoot some arrows into the target. Wherever the bear shafts land, that's going to be a good indicator of the adjustments we need to make. I'm looking for consistency with the bear shafts. If they're consistently going one direction, I can make adjustments to fix it, to bring the bear shafts closer to the fletched arrows. The goal is to be able to shoot these bear shaft arrows and have them fly with our fletched arrows. Ultimately, that's going to give us a very forgiving bow, and it's going to essentially broadhead tune our bow. We'll of course test it with broadheads too, but shooting a bear shaft and shooting a broadhead with fletchings is almost the exact same adjustments. So we're going to start with bear shafts. They're a little bit more finicky. We'll work our way out with distance from there. But yeah, let's go do some shooting. Let's send a few fletched arrows down range. We're going to get the sight close to hitting right in the middle. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then once we get that close to sighted in, we'll go ahead, we'll shoot the bear shafts and see where they land. Touch left. A little more. Shoot that top right one. Okay, close enough. Let's grab the fletched arrows and shoot some bear shafts. Okay, if anything, they're a little bit low still. And I would say with that last shot, maybe just a little bit to the right. But really, we're just going to shoot the fletched arrow to start, see where the bear shaft lands. If it's right next to it, we'll back up, shoot further. If it's further out, then we'll make the adjustments, and then we'll have to re-sight in anyway. So we don't need to really be nitpicky with our sight right now. We just want to make sure those bear shafts are flying with the fletched arrows. Shoot one fletched and then go right to the bear shaft. We'll shoot bear shaft number 1. Just kick it way to the right. A little bit expected. Probably don't even have to shoot this one, but I'm going to anyway just to see if it looks the same. Same result, which is good. So let's just go take a look down here and I'll explain this. So our fletched arrow is hitting, basically we'll just call it center. Our bear shaft arrows are hitting to the right, knocked to the left, okay? When we initially set up the rest here and I talked about the eyeball center shot, when I looked down and I said it looked maybe just a little bit outside. So with this happening with the bear shafts, even though we've got a perfect paper tear when we initially set it up, I'm actually going to move this rest a little bit to the inside, and I'm going to see if I can bring those bear shafts over to the fletched arrow. So again, I'm going to adjust this rest to the right, see if I can pull those bear shafts to the left. It might not be impossible that we do have to shim the cams a little bit, but I'm going to see if I can do it with the rest here first before we make any shim adjustments. So I can honestly just take my Allen wrench right here, loosen this up, and I want to move it to the right. So I'm just going to move it to that first hash right there, see if we get any kind of measurable difference. Okay, so obviously the arrows are going to come out of the bow more to the right, so I'm going to have to move my sight over to the right just a little bit. Not a huge deal, because we're just referencing everything compared to what? Compared to the fletched shaft. So even if the fletched shaft doesn't hit right here in the middle, even if it hits where these bear shafts are right here, and then I shoot the bear shaft, I'm always comparing the bear shaft to where the fletched arrow hits anyway. So let's step back to 20 yards and shoot again after that adjustment. Let me just look down this one and make sure I didn't get any fletching clearance by moving that rest to the inside, which looks like I do not. Let's go ahead and take the shot. Okay, seems right on. Shoot the bear shaft. We'll see if it acts any closer. Okay, it's definitely closer. I don't think I need to shoot the other one. Let's go take a look. Okay, so it's impacting pretty close to right on with the point, but it's obviously kicking out left quite a little bit. I think what I'm going to try to do to fix this is I'm going to shim that top cam to the left just a little bit, and then we'll come back out, we'll readjust the rest, we'll see if we can bring them just a little bit closer together. We're going to do all that we can to get these to fly as best as we can with our fletched shafts, because right now they are flying together, but if we were to back up to 30, that bear shaft is going to hit about right here, right? So we want to try to bring it together so that they're hitting both as close to perfect as possible. So let's go ahead, let's toss it in the press. We'll swap the spacers so we can shift that top cam to the left. The reason we do that, bear shaft impacting right, knock left, that's a left tear through paper. Left tear through paper, we're always moving the cam towards that tear. We're going to move our top cam to the left. So I bet if we look at our spacers, I bet the bigger spacer on the top is on the left, the thinner is on the right. We'll swap those two, move that cam to the left, and it should give us more adjustability to hopefully get that arrow flying a little bit straight. So let's give it a shot. Okay, so this is our thicker spacer, which was on the left. We've got our thinner spacer here. I suppose I should have put this in the tool first, huh? Okay, so let me just line up the first one here. This definitely makes it easier than trying to do it with your fingers, I can tell you that. Get the axle started in there. Pull out this side. Don't need this. Then I can work this spacer in this edge. There we go. There we go. All right, we swapped the spacers. Put this screw back in. Be very careful to start these threads perfect. It's a pretty small screw. We don't want to get those threaded in there wrong. Double check all the cables, make sure everything is good where it needs to be, which it looks like it is. Okay. Let's go shoot it again, see what it looks like. Okay, so to start, I'm just going to shoot the fletched shaft. Likely not going to hit on like it was before, so I'm just going to leave it wherever it is. I'll aim at the exact same spot on the target, and then I'll shoot the bear shafts, and we're going to compare the bear shafts to where the fletched arrow lands. So let's go ahead and take a shot. That was right on. Looked pretty good. Definitely closer. I'm going to shoot one more. At least it's consistent, huh? Let's go take a look. So, fletched arrow, my bare shaft arrows. Obviously they're flying consistent. That is key. That's what we're really looking for. Obviously they're hitting on with the fletch shaft, but they're still kicking out a little bit to the left. Not as bad as they were, because the last time they were hitting still a little bit to the right and they were kicked way more to the left. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. With that said, I think we're going to need to continue to shift the cam a little bit more to the left to get these from kicking the way that they are. So let's, since we're so close here at 20 and we can't really see the difference of the arrow angle, let's go ahead, let's shoot at 30 and just get kind of a baseline. Then we'll go back inside, we'll grab the different spacers, the thinner spacers, we'll shim that cam further left, and we'll see what kind of arrow flight we can get with that. There we go. That's definitely a better example of what's happening with those bare shafts. Okay, let's go take a quick look. So again, not important where the dot's at. We're just focused on the bare shafts relative to the fletched arrow. They're both flying consistently to the right just a little bit. We're going to go back in. Instead of adjusting that rest further to the right at this point, we're going to continue shimming the cam, the top cam, to the left. We'll put a thinner spacer on the left side, a thicker spacer on the right side, move that cam over, see if we can continue to bring them in. So let's go do that. Okay, got a couple different sets of spacers here. So if I look at them, these here are the biggest adjustment. And so I think I might go all the way up to the biggest adjustment. If it's too far, we can always go back down, but I think if we go with the next spacers, I'm not sure it's going to be enough of an adjustment. So I think I'm going to take these gray spacers out and I'm going to swap them for the red. So let's go ahead and do it. All right, so that was a big adjustment with those spacers. So let's see what kind of results we get from it. Okay, no adjustment to the sight, no adjustment to the rest, no adjustment to anything else. I just shimmed those cams. That's looking pretty good. Okay. That looks a lot better. Let's go take a look. Not quite perfect, but we are completely different than what it just was. So I think with our initial rest movement, if we move that rest back to where it was when we started, I think it's going to bring these bare shafts just over to just above the fletched arrow, which is going to be perfect. So let's make that adjustment to the rest back over, and then there's no sense in trying it again at 20 yards. We're already really close. Let's go ahead, let's shoot it at 30 yards and see what it looks like compared to the fletch. So we'll go back and make that rest adjustment and shoot at 30. Let's go take a look. Okay, so they're both right there. That's a lot better than where we started. This was the first bare shaft I shot. This was the second bare shaft I shot. One is going to the right, one is going to the left. It's very, very, very possible that this difference is from me, the archer, not the bow itself. Probably the grip, probably the grip more than anything, but could also be my anchor, string pressure on the face, anything like that. It's very, very close. I would say if both these arrows hit on the right side, I would say we need to move our rest back to the right just a very small amount. But let's go ahead and just shoot this again with no adjustment and see if we get a similar result or if they are leaning consistently to one side. I'm also going to keep track of these bare shafts too to know if this one flies right again, if this one flies left again, because the individual arrow might react differently than the other one. So if we're getting consistent results with the arrows, then it's the arrows, it's not the bow, it might not be me, it could be the arrows itself. So I think this is probably a good place to say that you can only tune the bow as good as you can shoot. If I can't shoot better than this, if I can't be more consistent with these bear shafts and I'm getting them going both directions, we can't make an adjustment. If one's going right, one's going left, I don't know which way to go. I could have 3 or 4 bear shafts and shoot, and if 5 out of the 6, 5 are on the right side, then I know, okay, maybe it's one bear shaft, right, that is off, and the majority is to the right, and I'll tune to the majority. But in this scenario, I'm going to try to tune for the consistency that I have. If I can't be more consistent, I can't tune any better. But in all reality, 30 yards, bear shafts like this, almost any broadhead I'm going to screw on this arrow is going to shoot right with my field points, and that's the ultimate goal as a bow hunter. So let's go back and do some more shots and see what it looks like. Okay, we've changed nothing. We're going to shoot again. That is much, much better. That's 30 yards with the bear shafts. So based on the first group we shot and now this group that we shot, it's clear to me it's not the bow, it's not the arrows. It was 100% me that got the left and right impacts. So these are flying together at 30 yards. Let's just push a little further. Let's go to 40 and see if I can still stay consistent enough. If we get the two to group one direction or another, we'll make it very, very slight adjustments. If not, this bow is on its way to be tuned extremely well. So let's give it a shot at 40. Okay. These are my bear shafts at 40. They are right with my fletched arrows. Been shooting quite a few ends of it, as you've seen. There's been some inconsistencies with the bear shafts. It's all from me as the archer, just doing things very slightly different with grip or whatever else it might be. Sometimes I'm not even necessarily feeling the difference in the grip, but just a little bit of difference can cause that bear shaft to fly completely off. So I'm happy with this. I'm happy with where this is landing at 40 yards. We can keep going out and get as nitpicky as possible, but to really do it and do it right, we need to have a lot more time, a lot more arrows, decrease the other variables, and go from there. If you can get bear shafts to fly with your fletched arrows at 40 yards, your broadheads are going to fly on. It's going to be perfectly fine for you. So from here, let's just get everything sighted in. We'll go from 20 to 100, get it dialed as close as we can, and we'll be set to go. Okay, now that we got the bow pretty much all where we want it, our sight and our rest is tuned where we want it to be, we're going to go ahead, we're going to lock in the cord, and we're going to tie in the peep sight. So just real quickly, I'll just make a slight mark here. Actually, I'm going to use a different marker so we can see it. Use this gold one. Make a slight mark on the black right there, and then I can just pull this through, and I'll just tie a knot on the end of it. Just keep it simple, doesn't need to be fancy, and pull it right to the end of that so that it stops right where it was. And then I can just cut off this end, fray it a little bit, burn it down, pull it through, and it is good. Rest is good. We'll go ahead, we'll tie in the peep sight. So I'll just cut off this little tiny wrap that I got here. This was just kind of a non-permanent tie-in just to keep the peep from falling out as I was doing all that shooting with the bear shafts and everything else. Be real careful not to cut yourself or the string or anything like that when you cut that off. Okay, I'll just take a pretty long piece here. It's always good to have more than not enough. I'm just using 0.018 power grip cord from BCY. We'll start just on this bottom side here. Go down. Okay, since the peep is twisting this way, I'm going to wrap the opposite way to kind of help bring it back around. Okay, that's good. Fold that piece back, coming over the top, so I'll go underneath, make this loop, wrap it 4 times, come back over, get rid of my loop, wrap it back. This is called back serving. Just like this, hold it tight in your finger. If I can get this end, go ahead and pull it tight. Okay, bottom knot is set. I'm going to thread it up through this here, through the split in the string. That way I can really tie that peep side in and hold it firm. Okay, once you're at this point, we'll go over the top of the peep sight, come down on this right side of the channel, pull it right into the channel of the peep. We'll wrap it around the peep here. Just did it 3 times, that's plenty good. Go back through the bottom side, pull it tight, pull it into the channel, just like that. It's naturally going to want to wrap on this right side, just like this, so that's the way we're going to go. That's pretty close. We'll finish it off here with the wrap. Wrap it 3 times, pull, 4, 5, 6, pull, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, finish it off with the back serve. Okay, got that. Cut these tag ends off. Melt them down very carefully. Fire burns up, so as long as the string's underneath, you're not going to hurt it. And that is ready to go. So I've got a lot of small tinkering that I want to do yet. A lot with draw length, a lot with stabilizers, a lot with just really small, fine things that are specific to me as a shooter. But ultimately, this bow is set up. It's tuned for a good standard, a good starting point today. Ultimately, if you guys are watching this video because you want to learn how to set up your own bow and you want to learn the ins and outs of how to do things and do it efficiently, we've created the Ultimate Bow Build Masterclass online course. We built this course just a couple years ago, and we wanted to provide all the information inside and out, exactly how to do it in a comprehensive guide that is easy to follow, that you guys can refer back to for years. And it doesn't have to be specific to one bow either. It's functional across all the different bows out there. Hopefully this video here has helped you guys. Hopefully you've picked up something. Hopefully you've learned something. But if you're looking for a guide to teach you how to set up your own bow from the start to the finish with all the little tiny details in between, the Ultimate Bow Build Masterclass is for you. So thank you guys for watching the Ultimate Bow Build here with the Alpha X33, and we'll see you on the next one. Is that middle to end it?
It looks good.
That felt good.